Going to have a look at some tools today. They're horticultural and also agricultural. Not commonplace ones, but I find them interesting. You take this one. It's a saw, obviously, but that one was a blackcurrant saw, made especially for pruning blackcurrants. The blackcurrant will fruit on young wood. So it puts up young wood from the year and fruits on that wood. And if you're cutting out old wood at the base of a big blackcurrant bush, that is a perfect thing to do it with. Because you're going low down, so you can't really have a saw that you're going to do this business with. And you can get the pressure with this one. You're kind of above it, and it's so easy to saw out with that. Pruning saw for blackcurrant. Now, this chap here I didn't know existed until quite recently. It's a gooseberry pruning knife. And the only part of this that is sharp is there. That is quite flat. The idea is obviously that you could put this down in the middle of a gooseberry bush and cut off a piece without any fear of getting scratched. But the good ladies who were teaching way back in Miss Havergal's time always maintained that if a gooseberry bush was pruned properly from the start, you can manage to get your hand in to pick the fruit and prune without getting any damage whatsoever. You'd have to be handling quite a lot of fruit bushes to warrant that, and I suppose the same with this one. You could guess what that is, and that went with it, which will give you a clue. So the two together were for harvesting a particular crop, and that particular crop was asparagus. That's why that one is called a grass box and that one is called a grass knife. Because in the Evesham area, it was always grass. With this, you needed that shaped knife to cut the asparagus because you're aiming to get to the bottom of these growths. So you need a knife like that to get down there and cut it off. Then it was placed in here, quite simply, and held firmly while you strung it up. And the idea was that you would tie up in this section with bass or raffia, and this one was tied up with a withy. It would be a long strip of willow wood, young willow wood, cut quite thinly, and that it was used a lot for tying up various things. But they would tie this up with a withy. The idea of that was that when it was being cooked, the raffia wouldn't stay so firm as the withy would. So the withy wood went at the bottom, and that would enable it to keep up together while it was being whether it's cooked or steamed with the asparagus. That was the object of it. And now we're on to spudding. Spudding. Nothing to do with potatoes, but that is a spud. It's like a little spade on the end of a handle. And that enables you to get to weeds that are out of reach without having to walk all round it or through it. The old gent my dad worked for, he had the spud on the end of a walking stick. And occasionally he'd go for a wander around the pleasure gardens in the evening, and he'd take his walking stick with a spud on and go around and he'd take out the odd weed, and he felt he was doing his bit. I'm sure he made a good job of it. I put this one in with it. Not commonly used, but it would be if you had a lot of greenhouses. That, believe it or not, is a pot tapper. When I came here, which was 45 years ago, they would not use plastic pots. They had to be clay pots. There was all the greenhouses full up with clay pots. They had to be watered by hand. Now, if you need to know if a clay pot needs watering, you tap it. If it rings, it's dry. If it's a dull thud, it's got enough moisture in it. So here, a lot of those work in various departments had to come together in the frame yard, in the greenhouse yard. There's 18 big greenhouses, some of them, full of pots, and do an hour's watering. All you could hear were the pots being tapped. So all you've got is a bit of boxwood put on the end of a cane. And box because it's very hard, obviously, and the moisture wouldn't get in that so easily as it would on some of the softer woods. Quite a job watering greenhouses.